in KwaZulu-Natal in terms of section 1391C of the Constitution. Both interventions are referred to the Select Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs for consideration and reporting, and that is on behalf of the Chairperson of the Council. I would also like to inform members that there will be a briefing session immediately after the adjournment of the sitting, and therefore all members are requested to remain for that briefing. Does any member wish to make a notice of a motion? Yes, you may proceed, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Chairperson. It's a motion of exigency. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to give notice that at the next sitting of the Council, it notes that Mogalakwena local municipality is in disarray due to two factions of councillors in a battle for control of the municipality. Mr. Gwangwa, the previous mayor of the Waterberg District Municipality, is the second person shot related to these battles. A KPMG forensic audit was conducted more than 2 years ago with findings of fraud and corruption that involves the previous mayor and previous member of this council, Mr. Tlafile Mashamaite. The recommendations of this KPMG report have not yet been implemented. Various attempts were made to place this municipality under administration. The North Gauteng High Court found that there is no reason for intervention and that a section 139 would only be used to settle political scores. The DA calls on Minister Pravin Gordhan of Kokta to address this council on why the KPMG report's findings or recommendations have not yet been implemented, the allegations that a section 139 intervention would only be used to settle political scores, and what the minister's plans is to do.
Honourable Member, your time is up. You've got only 2 minutes, Honourable Members, for a motion. Yeah. Your time is up. Honourable Falingen.
Honourable Chairperson, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to give notice that at the next sitting of Council, it notes the efforts of the Department of Education in the Eastern Cape to reduce on the one side the parked or excess teachers at some schools and on the other hand the vast number of vacant positions at many schools. That there are still an excess of 5,000 teachers in schools, whereas there are currently 3,202 teacher vacancies at many other schools. That the Minister of Education hopes to fill these vacancies by December this year, and that she guarantees that this problem will not recur next year. The Democratic Alliance calls for a one classroom, one teacher principle to be implemented at all schools in the Eastern Cape, insists that the department immediately enforces its agreement to eradicate the excess teachers, calls on the school governing bodies and parents of the more than 40 closed schools in the province to reopen their schools so not as to deprive our children and learners from the right to education, and further calls on the Select Committee of Education to revisit the Section 100 intervention of the Department of Education in the Eastern Cape invoked during the 4th Parliament, scrutinising the failure to address this matter of teacher vacancies. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable Chetty.
Thank you, Chair. I hereby give notice on behalf of the DA that in acknowledging the decision to dissolve the Moai Provincial Council by invoking Section 139 of the Constitution and placing it under provincial administration, that the decision comes after several weeks of unrest, which has disrupted not only the lives of the community, but also the main transport network in that province. The decision was made after months of allegations of mismanagement, corruption, and infighting within the municipality. The MEC should have acted sooner. The growing number of KZN municipalities under provincial administration is evidence of the result of poor cadre deployment. and that this House calls on the Minister of COCTA to act against the KZN and MEC of COCTA for failing in the constitutional mandate to take decisive action sooner, thereby preventing the service delivery protests in that province, and ensures that the due processes have been followed for governmental intervention and not political intervention. I so move.
Honorable Masango.
Honourable Chairperson, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby give notice of motion that this House notes with great concern and urgency the health system crisis in the Free State Province. Further notes the devastating danger in which lives of South Africans in that province are due to the dire shortage of critical chronic medication for diseases such as HIV and AIDS, diabetes, and tuberculosis. Further notes the chronic and crippling shortage of medical equipment and supplies, needles for patients' beds, and the downright collapse of the health system. Further notes the financial management and procurement ineptitude that has been displayed prior to and during the crisis by both the MEC and the management of these centres, which has led to the shortfall of an estimated 700 million at the beginning of the current financial year. Strongly propose that the Select Committee on Health prioritizes an oversight visit to the Free State with a view to take necessary steps to bring about an end to the embarrassing indictment of the constitutional right to life of those needing medical attention from the Free State provincial health systems and restore normality to the working conditions of health workers of the province and improve health services delivery to deserving South Africans. I so move.
Thank you very much. Honorable Thaba.
Thanks, Honourable Chair. I hereby give notice of a motion on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that I will move in the next sitting of the House, that the Democratic Alliance welcomes the Supreme Court of Appeal judgment last week, which upheld a previous High Court judgment and ordered the National Prosecuting Authority to hand over the infamous spy tapes today. This is a victory for accountability, democratic institutions, and a victory for the DA in holding President Jacob Zuma to account. After 5.5 years in court and 6 court applications later, which the President opposed, South Africa will now find out the real reason behind why the 783 charges of corruption, fraud, money laundering, and racketeering faced by President Zuma were dropped on 6 April 2009. The lesson we can take out of this is that in the process of holding the executive to account, strong constitutional institutions and the rule of law are far more effective than big man politics. All in South Africa are equal before the law. Where there is a case to be answered for, the President must get what he has for long been asking, his day in criminal court. I so move.
Honorable Pakis.
Okay, Chair. I hereby move without notice that the Council knows that and welcome a report from the President.
Is that a notice of a motion or a motion without notice?
Motion without a notice.
No, we are still busy with notices of motions. Yeah. No, you'll be number 1 when we deal with it. So don't stress. Is there any member who wishes? Honorable Lavaskatli will be the last one.
Thank you, Chair. Honourable Chairperson, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to give notice that at the next sitting of the Council, this House debates the importance of national norms and standards for damage-causing animals in South Africa. I so move.
Thank you very much. Then we will proceed to notices without motion, motions without notices, and therefore Honourable Pakis will be number 1.
I hereby move without notice that the Council knows and welcome reports from the Presidency that South Africa is in discussion with Russia on the repatriation of remains of our outstanding heroes of our struggle buried in Russia back to South Africa. Further note that the repatriation of remains of fallen heroes of our struggle buried in Russia takes place when our country celebrates Heritage Month, and we appreciate their indomitable service to the cause of our revolution. We take this opportunity to welcome the tireless efforts of our South African government to ensure that these fallen heroes and heroines of our struggle, whose immortal remains are buried in many parts of the world, are returned to be buried amongst our people, and call upon all South Africans to celebrate Heritage Month this year by once again recommitting themselves to the ideals of democracy, freedom, and equality. So I so move.
Thank you very much, honourable member. Is there any objection to the motion? Sorry. Therefore, the motion shall be agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. Honourable Masang, did I have you? Oh, okay.
Honourable Chairperson, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby move without notice that this House notes with concern the consistent use of derogatory and racial rhetoric in referring to black members of the DA as darkies or rent-a-darkie, that all people who join the DA do this of their own free volition as adult, sensible citizens of this country whose freedom of association and choice is enshrined in the constitution of our land. Further note that some of these DA members' only political home is the DA, and they fail to understand why the ANC keeps telling them to come back home as they are at home. Further note that the DA is a legal political party formed on the basis of prevailing legislation and the provisions of the Constitution, and any South African can join it. And as such, they have voted for the DA in their millions. They are not rented to be part of the DA. Further notes that these undesirable, unparliamentary, and racist remarks contravene the principle of upholding the dignity and the decorum of the Council and the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. I so move.
Thank you very much, honourable member. Is there any objection to the motion? In the light of the objection, the motion may not be proceeded with. The motion without notice will now become a notice of a motion. Honourable Charles-Pierre.
Honourable Chairperson, I hereby move without notice that the Council notes with utter contempt reports that the SA Post Office spent over 2.1 billion rand in irregular expenditure in the past financial year. Further notes excuse me, that the financial losses were as a result of the irregular awarding of tenders according to a draft audit report for the financial year ending 31st of March 2014 by auditing firms Deloitte & Touche and Nkonki. Takes this opportunity to condemn in the harshest possible terms such blatantly and irresponsible use of public funds, and call on the select committees on communications and public enterprises and finance and the ministers responsible to ensure that these allegations are investigated and where there are elements of wrongful doing to ensure that those responsible are brought to book and face the consequences of their actions. I so move.
Thank you very much, honourable member. Is there any objection to the motion? Then I'll take it that the motion is agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. Honourable members, may I not remind you of your cell phones, please? Just switch them off if you can't take off the battery. Honourable Labuschagne.
The Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to move a motion without notice that the Council congratulates the South African Police Services for their support and quick action in finding Imelda Davids, who was reported missing on the 30th of July 2014 and reunited with the family on the 1st of August 2014. We thank and commend Lieutenant Colonel Esau, Captain Koopman, Warrant Officer Karolison, Warrant Officer Whiteman, Warrant Officer Kleinsmith, Warrant Officer Gibbons, Warrant Officer Stander, Sergeant Chetty, Sergeant Hook, Sergeant Twaitis, Constable Lewis, Constable Manassa for their astounding performance. I so move.
Is there any objection to the motion? In In the light of no objection, then the motion shall be agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. Is there an objection? I want to know if you behave like this, you'll make me think that there's an objection, and therefore arrive at an incorrect decision. Okay. Oh, I just heard a mumbling. All right. Honorable Falliwen.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to move a motion without notice that the Council notes that Eskom is not transparent in replying to written questions of delegates in the House, and proof of this is their reply to question 5 published on the 4th of July and question 9 of the same date. In section 2 of the first question, Eskom refused to disclose the names of the municipalities owing this public enterprise money for electricity sales, with claiming that their, in quote, client information is confidential and cannot be disclosed without their consent. The House notes that both Ministers of COCTA and Department of Water Affairs disclosed which municipalities have outstanding and overdue accounts with Eskom, water boards, water services authorities, and water services providers. The Democratic Alliance reminds Eskom that members of this House have to do oversight over Eskom as a public enterprise, which is actually in financial difficulty. Also reminds Eskom that members of this House must do oversight over local municipalities, especially those in financial distress, which Eskom claims owes the state entity billions of rands. Calls on the state entity Eskom to fully disclose the required information to the above questions within the next 10 working days, as Eskom and the municipalities are public institutions operating
Honourable Member, your time is up. In the first place, I found it a little bit difficult because at one point I wanted to stop the member, because I thought the Constitution says that members of the executive are individually and collectively accountable to Parliament, and not necessarily institutions in this instance. And now if we pass a motion in the light of Eskom, it's a grey area. But nevertheless, is there any objection to the motion? And if there is an objection to the motion, then the motion shall not be proceeded with. Honorable Member, I'm very sorry, you'll forgive me. I didn't get your name. You may proceed.
Honorable Chair, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I wish to move a motion without notice that this Council note that Helenvale-Galvandale area since the 1960s is renowned for their gangsterism and crimes due to social illness of the community that was forced by this Group Areas Act to live in overcrowded and squandered conditions. There are currently 17 different gang groups operating in the northern areas. The latter pose a major problem for drug merchants who constantly fight over turf. Since 2008, a new turn in shooting to fight for ground. Guns has become freely available, and even the new turn is that they're rented out to do the hit and as for a fee. During the ongoing violence since the beginning of this year, a total of 21 innocent people were killed. SAPS is there, but with a very limited resources, they cannot just master their problems because they are under-resourced. Honourable Chair, what are needed are more resources for our local police station that are really committed to stem out the tide of violence. The community are mostly Afrikaans speaking and also requires that SAPS deploy people who are able to speak their language. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I also left the Honourable Member because you are raising a motion in anticipation of a discussion that is going to be held in the House. So, is there any objection to the motion? Then the motion as it is objected to. Let us just be careful of what we say, honorable members. And especially if I see a member being a new member, you know, it becomes so rude for me to say you're out of order. Please, but let's try and our best to be in order. Therefore, the motion is not agreed to. It will then become a more notice of a motion. Honorable Mlambo.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Chairperson. I hereby move without notice that the Council notes reports of an attempted coup in the Kingdom of Lesotho last weekend when the military seized key buildings and installations in the country. 2, we commend the swift role played by South Africa, the Southern African Development Community Troika on defense, politics and security, chaired by President Jacob Zuma, and consists of South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Namibia, and calls on the political parties in Lesotho and the people of Lesotho, supported by SADC and the AU, to continue to work through democratic practices and peaceful dialogue to find a lasting solution to the challenges confronting the kingdom. I so move.
Thank you very much. Is there any objection to the motion? In the absence of any objection, therefore, the motion shall be agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. Honorable Von Brandes.
Deputy Chairperson, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to move a motion without notice that the Council congratulates the Western Cape Provincial Government on the results of the Management Performance Assessment for 2013 by the Department of Performance, Monitoring and Evaluation in the Presidency. The results on all 4 key performance areas were as follows. Strategic Management, Western Cape number 1 with 88%. Governance and Accountability, Western Cape were number 1 with 96%. HR Management, Western Cape number 1 with 54%. Financial Management, Western Cape number 1 with 82%. The MPAT is one of the several initiatives to improve the performance and service delivery of provincial departments. This system was approved by National Cabinet in June 2012. I so move.
Thank you very much. Is there any objection to the motion? In the light of the objection, therefore, the motion will not be proceeded with, and it will become a notice of a motion. Honorable, order, honorable member. There is an objection to the motion. Honorable Isaac.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to move a motion without notice that Council takes note. During last week, officials of the Thaba Chweu municipality in Mpumalanga had to do damage control in order to prevent the assets from being seized due to the outstanding monies owed to service providers. The Sheriff of the Court arrived with a notice of attachment issued to Thaba Chweu municipality for 563,670 rand, owing to Sivu Tumililu Trading. It is obvious that the financial woes of the municipality are nowhere near ending. This is the 5th time, Honorable Chairperson, that this municipality's assets are being attached for failure to conduct its financial affairs soundly. The DA therefore urges that this House to have this municipality placed under administration in terms of Section 139. I so move. Thank you.
Is there any objection to the motion? In the light of the objection, the motion shall not be proceeded with and therefore shall be printed as a notice of a motion. I'm taking the last 2 and then we're done. Honorable, you know.
Michalakis, thank you, Honourable Deputy Chairperson. Honourable Deputy Chairperson, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to move without notice that Council notes that August 2014 marked the centenary of the start of the First World War. 6 September 2014 will mark 75 years since South Africa declared war against Nazi Germany and our entry into the Second World War. Acknowledges, thirdly, that although peace is what we should always desire and aspire to, conflict in defense of freedom and justice is sometimes inevitable. Acknowledges that thousands of South African soldiers of all races gave their lives to help build a freer world. Fifthly, acknowledges with pride our country's contribution in bringing about a peaceful end to both conflicts. Sixth, acknowledges with the utmost pride that whenever called upon to do the right thing in the face of danger, South African soldiers proved to be among the bravest men and women in the world, earning the respect of our allies and foes alike in the brotherhood of nations. And finally, calls upon the Minister of Arts and Culture to ensure that all monuments commemorating the memory of these brave soldiers be maintained, restored, and preserved for future generations, lest we forget. I so move.
Is there any objection to the motion? Then therefore the motion shall be agreed to in terms of section 65 of the Constitution. Honorable Zwane.
Okay. Thank you, Chairperson. I move without notice that Council 1 notes that on the 2nd of September, His Excellency President Jacob Zuma opened the new Lesotho Hospital in Eppington in the Northern Cape. 2, Council further notes that over the past 5 years, 300 new health facilities have been built, including 160 new clinics across South Africa. And 3, Council notes takes this opportunity to congratulate the government of the Northern Cape and the national government for their sterling work in ensuring that the hospital project is finalized timeously. As we move to redouble our efforts, we continue to build a successful and a healthy nation. We also continue to celebrate the 20 years of our democracy under the stewardship and capable leadership of the ANC-led government. I will so move.
Is there any objection to the motion? In the light of the objection, the motion shall not be proceeded with and therefore become a notice of a motion. Honorable Chief Whip.
Chairperson, thank you very much. I hereby, on behalf of the African National Congress, I hereby move without notice, Chair, that the Council 1 notes reports of the resignation of the Independent Electoral Commission Chairperson, Advocate Penzi Tlakula. 2, further note that Advocate Tlakula has served the people of South Africa with distinction and dedication for more than a decade at the helm of the IEC, first as Chief Electoral Officer and later as Chairperson. Thirdly, acknowledge the commitment, dedication, and hard work of Advocate Tlakula and her team, the IEC, in their tireless efforts to consistently deliver credible, free, and fair elections. And lastly, take this opportunity, Chair, to pay tribute and recognize the sterling work of Advocate Tlakula and wishes her well in her future endeavors and hope that she and her contributions will not be lost to South Africa. I so move, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any objection to the motion? In the light of an objection, therefore, the motion shall not be proceeded with, and it will then be printed as a notice of a motion. That was the last motion, honorable members. We are already way beyond the scheduled or limited time for motions. We shall then proceed to the motion on the order papers printed in the name of the Chief Whip. Honorable Chief Whip.
What is my motion? Chairperson, members of this August House, as the Chief Whip of Council, I move that the following resignation of Mr. Dumisane Livingstone Kumbi as a member of the Judicial Services Commission, the Council designate the following members in terms of Section 178, subsection 1, Roman figure 1 of the Constitution. A. Honorable Tandi Ruth Mudise. B. Honorable Tsapane Khwedi Mampuru. C. Honorable Dikgang Stock. And D. Honorable Archibald Jombonyami. I move accordingly, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much. As there is no speakers list, I shall now put the question, and the question is that the motion be agreed to. As the decision is dealt with in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution, I shall first ascertain whether all delegation heads are present in the House. Are we all in the House, delegation heads? In accordance with Rule 71, I shall now proceed by allowing provinces the opportunity to make their declaration of vote if they so wish. Is there any province that wishes to make a declaration of vote? In the absence of any, then we shall proceed to the voting on the question. Heads of delegations shall vote by pressing, if the machines are working. Are they operational, these machines? Okay, fine. Let us proceed manually. Eastern Cape.
Eastern Cape support.
Freistaat.
Support as well.
Gauteng. Gauteng.
Gauteng supports.
KwaZulu-Natal.
In favor.
In favor.
Kuluma.
Oh, all right. Isagela Slam.
Okay. Limpopo.
Chairperson, Limpopo supports.
Mpumalanga. We want it on Hansard.
Yeah, Mpumalanga support.
Northern Cape.
Northern Cape supports.
Northwest.
Northwest supports.
Western Cape.
We support.
Western Cape? I didn't hear Western Cape. Western Cape?
We support.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All provinces voted in favor. Therefore, I declare the motion as agreed to in terms of Section 171 of the Constitution. We now come to the subject. What is that now? On what point are you rising?
Honourable Chair, just to say tomorrow is a Parliament meeting for hearing aids. It's for free.
No, that's fine. I accept the invite. We now come to the subject matter for discussion as printed on the order paper. May I therefore take the opportunity to welcome both the Minister present and call on Honourable Masuta to introduce the subject matter.
Honourable Chairperson and the Chief Whip of this August House, Honourable Minister of Police, and MECs present here, members of this August House, as well as specifically of the Select Committee on Justice and Security, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. South Africa's transition from an apartheid state to democracy has been underpinned by our constitutional values and obligations. This is premised on the basis that as an ANC government, we recognize safety as a fundamental human rights and a precondition for human development and enhancing productivity and full enjoyment of all aspects of life. Over the last 2 decades of our democratic rule, we have made great strides in our endeavor to remedy the past injustices by focusing on ensuring that all that all our communities are and feel safe. In line with this, the President has since 2009, together with the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security, that is JCPS cluster, developed an outcome-based model, as well as evaluation and monitoring tools in order to realize the broad strategic outcome that, as I said earlier, all people in South Africa are and feel safe, as articulated both in the policies of the ruling party as well as the National Development Program. The past 20 years have further been characterized by growing unity in our action against crime and greater coordination between JCPS cluster departments and partnerships with civil society. Government has also focused in general on improving the life conditions or living conditions for all, especially the poor. Internationally, drug use continues to exact a significant toll, with valuable human lives and productive years of many persons being lost. According to the UN Office on Drugs and Crimes World Drug Report 2014, an estimated 183,000 drug-related deaths were reported in 2012. That figure corresponds to a mortality rate of 40 deaths per million amongst the population aged 15 to 64. The said report also states that in South Africa, expert perception is that there is an increase in the use of heroin and methamphetamine and some decrease in the use of crack cocaine, with use of other drugs being stable. Unfortunately, we need to acknowledge that at this point in time, the scourges of gangsterism and illicit drugs, as in many parts of the world, remains serious threats to the social fabric of the South African society. Depressed socioeconomic conditions, together with unemployment, inequality, a lack of social cohesion, and inadequate care for children are amongst the factors that contribute to the flourishing of gangsterism and illicit drugs in our country. Our view is that if we want to succeed in addressing these crimes, we need to adopt a different approach, because we cannot solely rely on law enforcement agencies to fight this scourge. The difficulty presented by this debate is that prosecutorial and judicial components in the criminal justice system are at the tail end, as this is a societal problem that these two components can only prosecute or come in through prosecution when the damage has already been done and the horse has therefore bolted. Prevention strategies by all role players in the criminal justice system, together with civil organizations, will therefore serve as catalysts in uprooting the challenges presented by these crimes. This is what prompted the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development and the NPA to embark on schools outreach programs whose primary objective is to educate learners about consequences of committing crime and indulging in substances. The Department of Correctional Services has in its outreach programs utilized rehabilitated offenders to engage learners on the negative consequences of being lured into gangs and into the use of drugs. The criminal activities relating to gangsterism and illicit drugs are often linked to organized crime, corruption, cybercrime, and transnational crimes. These are posing threats to national security and impact on the rule of law or the observance of the rule of law in our country, the integrity of the criminal justice system, and the well-being of our community, and therefore are being closely monitored and assessed by our intelligence and law enforcement agencies. As a consequence, JCPS cluster has, as part of its focus areas, prioritized the fight against gangsterism and the use of illicit drugs. The risk assessments that have been done are assisting us in the development of appropriate intervention strategies at national, provincial, and local spheres of government. The fight against gangsterism and drugs is normally perceived as predominantly a law enforcement issue. However, it needs to be pointed out that activities to counter these scourges span over the fields of the intelligence agencies, police, prosecution services, the courts, social development services, health services, education, financial and economic sectors, and international relations and cooperation. The government and the cluster's approach are therefore of necessity multidimensional, interdepartmental, and cross-cutting over the whole value chain of the cluster and beyond, and in particular focusing on the criminal justice system in its totality. Honourable Chairperson, we therefore need a multifaceted approach that involves everybody, because some of these functions cannot be apportioned solely to law enforcement or the criminal justice cluster alone. Indeed, these challenges tend to be more social in nature and therefore better dealt with socially. The use of illicit drugs as well as gangsterism in general is often associated with serious crime forms such as murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, organized crime, and theft, to mention a few. To assist in this regard, South Africa has passed many pieces of legislation to combat these types of crimes, such as, amongst others, the Extradition Act, the International Cooperation in Criminal Matters Act, Prevention and Treatment of Drug Dependency Act, the Prevention of and Treatment for Substance Abuse Act, the Drugs and Drug Trafficking Act, the Prevention of Organized Crime Act, the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act, and the Prevention and Combating of Trafficking in Persons Act. The Financial Intelligence Center Act sets up a regulatory anti-money laundering regime intended to break the cycle used by gangs and organized criminals or criminal groups to benefit from illegitimate profits. In addition, a national cyber security policy and a draft cyber security bill have been developed with the aim of improving South Africa's cyber security and cyber crime combating efforts. These policies and pieces of legislation are the weapons we use daily in the fight against drugs and gangsterism. In view of the Western Cape in particular, the Cape Flats experiencing drug, the proliferation of drug problems, a priority court was established in 2010 in Khayelitsha with the primary objective of prioritizing investigation and prosecution of dealing in drugs and drug-related cases. The court deals with all drug dealing cases committed in an organized crime manner and cases where assets profile of the suspects reflect asset forfeiture potential, mechanisms calculated to achieve that are deployed. By March 2014, 339 cases had been finalized by that court. Chairperson, if I focus on illicit drugs, the National Drug Master Plan 2013 approved by Cabinet last year on the 26th of June 2013 is being implemented by the Central Drug Authority, the CDA, and all relevant departments are participants. The CDA was established as an advisory body in terms of the Prevention of and Treatment of Substance Abuse Act number 70 of 2008, and is mandated to assist in the fight against substance abuse in the country as a whole. The National Drug Master Plan also attempts to provide a new way of thinking about regulating illicit drugs. In the past, prohibition and criminal law were the key weapons in the fight against illicit drugs. This approach has worldwide not worked as effectively as had been hoped for. It is generally accepted that a single approach such as criminalization or decriminalization of substance abusers will not solve the problem. Instead, a number of strategies should be applied in an integrated way. Realizing this, governments and agencies around the world have been searching to find policies and legislation that might be more effective. Honorable members, gangsterism is a sad reality in many areas of our country, but particularly here in the Western Cape. But we should not fall into the trap of viewing gangsterism only through the prism of the Cape Flats gangs, as it is a serious national problem that is not limited to a particular province or locality. It is also important to acknowledge the different manifestations, characteristics, and risks posed by gangsterism in the respective provinces. The Prevention of Organized Crime Act, that is POCA of 1998, defines gangs as any formal or informal or goings and organization, association, or group of 3 or more persons which has as one of its activities the commission of one or more criminal offenses. Such group or organization having an identifiable name or identifying sign or symbol, and whose members individually or collectively engage in or have engaged in a pattern of criminal activity. According to the Act, participation in a gang is criminal, even if the activities performed therein are themselves not necessarily the source of the crime. Gangsterism poses various threats to justice, crime prevention, and security. One of the most prominent threats posed by gangsterism is the threat of violence. Violence in gangsterism manifests itself by way of intimidation of state witnesses, thereby hampering prosecution processes and proper administration of justice. This challenge can be addressed when our prosecutors and the courts in general adopt an aggressive stance in cases involving gangs and impose harsher sentences and preferably custodial sentences even to first offenders. This will further address its impact on law enforcement institutions and the criminal justice system in general. The end result will be uprooting gangs committing crimes to enrich themselves, protecting themselves against rival gangs, bribing, intimidation, and corrupt law enforcement, intimidating corrupt law enforcement agencies, and the criminal justice system itself, and to exert their influence in society as the dominant and feared element within society. This will also bolster the cluster's efforts where the JCPS National Joint Operational and Intelligence Structure and its corresponding provincial committees that deal with gangsterism and can develop appropriate intervention strategies to respond to gangsterism. Honorable Chairperson, Correctional Services has in response developed an anti-gangsterism strategy in their sphere of operations to help address the institutional, systemic, and psychological gaps that have helped to sustain the influence of gangs in correctional centers. Our programs empower offenders with practical skills to change behavior and cope in a correctional center without any affiliation to gangs in any form. The primary objective of the strategy is to discourage offenders from joining gangs by designing programs and sensitize offenders on the negative consequences of gangsterism. This strategy is yielding the desired results if one has regard to the parole compliance rate of 94.7% that has been achieved in the last financial year. I can also share with the House that the cluster, through the Civilian Secretariat for Police, is busy with the development of an integrated national anti-gang strategy in conjunction with the State Security Agency and the other cluster departments.
As you conclude, Honourable Minister.
Let me, in conclusion, therefore, Chair, assure this August House that the ANC government, together with the South African Police Services and other JCPS cluster role players, will continue to focus on the fight against crime and the uprooting of gangsterism and drugs from our society. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. I therefore call on Honourable Minister Nhleko to continue the debate.
Honourable Honourable Chairperson, honourable members, ladies and gentlemen, Minister Justice and Correctional Services Advocate Masood has just made a very fundamental point here before us, that the fight against gangsterism and drugs in our community is a societal responsibility, and that the South African Police Service on its own and alone cannot be able to eradicate this scourge from our society. And this is precisely premised on the understanding that there is a multitude of issues that confront affected communities which must be addressed in a systematic way. This requires that interventions targeted at gangsterism, drugs, and its root causes be developed in a multi-agency fashion, incorporating government departments at all spheres in partnership with civil society and the community. As chairperson, the starting point is the need for and importance of a multidisciplinary approach to curbing gang-related crime, and in this instance, such an approach and emphasis can be found in a pronouncement made by President Jacob Zuma on the 16th of August 2012. I quote, "The situation in these areas required a long-term and multidisciplinary approach. The South African Police Service has the necessary capacity to deal with the situation in these areas," close quote. A multi-layered approach premised on the understanding that crime and its risk factors are intricately linked and thus require efforts that extend beyond the criminal justice sector. How best to achieve safety and security as an outcome must subsequently be assessed on the type of activities needed, from policing to socio-economic interventions. Various studies and empirical data attest to the fact that South Africa is not unique to the gangsterism phenomenon faced by other countries. Many South African cities are affected by the gang problem, but it is essentially the big urban cities such as Cape Town, Johannesburg, Durban, Port Elizabeth, Pretoria, and Kimberley that have borne the brunt of gang formations, gang violence, and drug abuse over the last 10 years. African countries in our continent, such as Nigeria, Kenya, and Sierra Leone, also face similar problems with gangs in different contexts. Nigerian gangs are formed around access to petroleum sector. In Sierra Leone, gangs are formed around the diamond mining industry. In Kenya, gangs tend to be involved in general criminality like robberies. The existence and prevalence of gangsterism threatens the social fabric of our society. It exposes vulnerable groups and the poor. It diminishes the freedom of social interaction, shrinks the public space for social actors, and makes social and personal relationships a risky undertaking. Concentrated patterns of habitation and prevalence of poverty tend to be festering grounds for criminality. Gangs in the South African typology have started to recruit young school children as members, and the number of gangs on schools and children has itself become a serious and common practice over the last few years. On the 19th of July 2014, our national broadcaster, the South African Broadcasting Corporation, captured one of the community marches organized by the Wentworth community in the south of Durban. They took to the streets protesting against gangsters and drugs. They say drug abuse has reached unprecedented levels, with teenagers being used as runners. This particular activity was led by interfaith organizations that continue to play a pivotal role in the fight against drugs and gangsterism, with the hope of turning the tide. The chairperson of Pastor Stephen John Bailey, who also happens to be the chairperson of a forum called the Building Credible Community, says that they are serving a notice on the drug dealers that churches condemn their actions. Quote unquote, we cannot stand and do nothing. We have reached a stage where we are going to stand up and use whatever means available to fight against drugs. These are the words from Pastor Bailey. Mother Johnson, who's a mother in the same community, says our children are starving. There are broken homes and there are no marriages anymore because of the drug issue. Anthony Smith focuses on the issue, expresses the issue around, focusing mainly around the young people in the area that are selling drugs. Quote unquote, some of them, they sleep on stairs, some are stealing from their homes. The community has issued a stern warning to drug lords and runners. Police are in fact investigating a recent case of a teenager killed in a drive-by shooting. A drug dealer was arrested after a drug bust last month in the same community. The above-mentioned occurrence is an illustration that if society can heed President Zuma's pronouncement for, quote-unquote, a multidisciplinary approach to cap gang-related crime, we can achieve a lot. Inextricably tied up with the South African gang typology is the drug economy. Unlike many of the gangs in the United States, drugs have been a common factor in the continued growth of the South African and Western Cape gangs. The Department of Social Development is at the forefront of the implementation of the National Drug Master Plan, which is intended to combat the spread of drugs throughout the country. The drug, crystal methamphetamine, or commonly known as TIC, is decimating communities across the country with the social and economic costs rocketing. Its effects are similar to that of communities in the west and east coast of the United States when crack cocaine hits the streets. Its social effects are devastating. Families are broken up, children become involved in a life of crime, and communities are generally torn apart in the process. The South African Police Service has been at the forefront of law enforcement methods and operations attempting to deal with the criminal activities of gang members. The involvement of the South African Police Service on its own has not been enough to stem the tide of young people gravitating towards gangs and drugs. Many countries cited as having gang problems such as Puerto Rico, Mexico, the United States, New Zealand, and United Kingdom all have the same problem when it comes to dealing with gangs, which is how to fight gangs without creating an army of new recruits and potential recruits into the gang underworld. Our mandate as a South African Police Service is clearly outlined in our Constitution that A, we are to prevent, combat, and investigate crime, we are to maintain public order, we are to protect and secure the inhabitants of the Republic and their property. Lastly, we are to uphold and enforce the law. The effective discharge of the function related to the investigation of crime will, for instance, greatly enhance the ability of the police to not only apprehend suspected gangsters, but will also contribute to stronger cases being presented to court. The ability to conduct detailed linkage analysis will increase the likelihood of linking perpetrators to multiple incidents of crime, particularly in relation to gang violence. Consequently, the importance of thorough investigation, starting with effective crime scene management, cannot be overemphasized. The DPCI has also been focusing on gang-related activities and gang-related investigations, especially in relation to the illicit drug trade. In February 2014, our DCPI unit in the Eastern Cape executed a successful takedown operation focusing on the prominent gang operating in the northern areas of Port Elizabeth with the illicit drug trade. In this operation, DPCI arrested 24 gang leaders and confiscated approximately drugs to the tune of about 200,000. This was a multidisciplinary operation executed together with Crime Intelligence, National Prosecuting Authority, and Asset Forfeiture Unit. DPCI in the Western Cape arrested prominent gang members for murder and other serious cases as they are currently on trial in terms of the racketeering and gang-related provisions of the Prevention of Organized Crime Act. The Civilian Secretariat for Police are coordinating a national anti-gang strategy. A work session has been convened wherein all SAPS provincial offices were required to provide an overview of the gang situation in their respective provinces. The South African Police Service and the National Prosecuting Authority are working together in addressing gang-related cases in terms of the poker legislation. Inquiries were made with the National Prosecuting Authority head office, and according to their records, the following gang-related cases were dealt with nationally in terms of the Poker Act since 2007. 56 gang-related cases were prosecuted. 34 gang-related prosecutions were finalized. 29 gang-related cases were finalized with convictions. 22 gang-related cases are currently on the roll. Two cases of gang members that were charged for both racketeering and gang-related activities. We have 3 cases of gang members charged with money laundering and gang-related activities. Finally, Chairperson, our efforts are all about honor and dignity. Our efforts are also about creating a humane society. And if we are to achieve in doing so, there is a need, and there shall always be a need for us to build a united front against crime and corruption. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. I therefore call on Honourable Thandi Mpambo Sukubwa.
Honourable Chairperson and the House at large. Young children, often as young as 10 or 12-year-old, are engaging in activities of gangsterism and later find themselves caught up in a world of drugs, either as addicts, dealers, or both. Some may even resort to prosecution in order to feed their addiction. The impact of gangs, Honourable Chairperson, and drugs is felt far beyond safety and policing. The ripple effects of drugs and gangsterism are felt in health, in education, in social development, the economy, and at the end of the day, the development of South Africa. I would like to say to this House, the issue of drugs and gangsterism, luxanduva lwethu sonke, and I'm happy that Minister Masuta said it is a concerted effort that will make us win the crime and drugs in the whole of South Africa. The fight against drugs and gangsterism is the forefront in the fight for the progress and the development of our nation. And it is a fight that we are losing, Honourable Chairperson. Instances of gang and drug-related crimes are on the rise. The SAPS, in many parts, is ill-equipped to deal with the problem. Chairperson, I would like to point to this House that you cannot put out felt fire with a hose pipe. You need more to do that. Yet, that is all. We as the provincial government have to fight the felt fires of gangs and drugs with a hose pipe. We need more of a concerted effort. It is no secret that the use of drugs and alcohol has torn entire families and communities apart. Drugs and gangsterism is our problem, and it needs a collaborative effort that we may fight and win. I invite the House to bring back the Ubuntu values that have completely eroded amongst us in all provinces, where my child is your child and your child is my child. This will be a cooperative fight in the true sense of cooperative governments. Kumbulani mawethu, umntu ngumntu ngabantu. Chairperson, I would like to point out, this is why I would like to share a number of initiatives that we, as the Western Cape, have in our stride achieved great success in the fight of drugs and gangsterism, in the hope that this debate will be an exchange of ideas rather than the political posturing. The crux of the DA-led government approach is that drugs and gangs are not one department's problem. Therefore, we have identified a transversal approach to combating drugs and gangsterism on both the criminal and social fronts. The Western Cape Department on Social Development and Community Safety jointly find Chrysalis Academy to provide programs for over 800 youth at risk every year. This program has received international recognition for its achievement and has also resulted in many of its graduates subsequently being employed due to the discipline and skills that they have learned there. The Western Cape government also has introduced specialized youth drug treatment programs in South Africa. We currently have 5 residential programs for youth and for our outpatient treatments based on at schools. I believe that these programs are unique to the Western Cape. The Western Cape Social Development Department has also introduced outpatient opiate replacement therapy to address heroin addiction. And I'd like to say, with the community of safety, we've also held 2 summits in both Nyanga and Kailicha to address the problem. Western Cape has increased the accessibility of drug treatment to citizens of this province. Before 2009, there were 7 sites where treatment was provided, and now we're sitting with 24 sites, of which 10 are residential and 14 outpatients. We also introduced step-down services to people who completed treatment in order to reduce relapse rates. Key to the address of gang and crime problem in addressing the youth is addressing the youth unemployment. Chairperson, we have had great success with the implementation of the youth cafes in the Western Cape, where young people can access opportunities to develop IT and job market skills. This gives hope to young South Africans so that they cannot look to gangs or drug dealers for their survival. The Western Cape has also recognizes the negative effects of absence of parents to give structure and guidance in their children's lives. So, through the Western Cape's Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport, the provincial government is providing structured after-school activity programs at schools which don't offer any programs of their own. This gives South Africans alternative activities, including team sports and life skills. The Mass Opportunity Development Centers that is located within the Department of Arts and Culture program also include nutrition support for children who attend and yielded higher school attendance for province in the Western Cape. And I would like to point out, Honorable Chairperson, that the Western Cape Education Department has also initiated a project to establish school liaison officers in all police stations and introduce a school resource officer program. This is hope for our youth. These offices in all police stations assign a law enforcement officer to schools which are situated in high crime and gang violence areas in order to provide the youth with relevant advice and support, and provide the schools with the crime prevention programs. But most importantly, this has helped to ensure that our children remain in school where they can learn in a peaceful manner and safe environment. We cannot hope to have any effect in the fight against gangsterism or drugs if we, the elected representative of the people, reduce the debates to petty politics. Whilst bickering and squabbling amongst ourselves, parents are losing their children to drugs and gangs. Children are losing their parents to drugs and gangs. And South Africa is losing the hope to a better future. Let's all be committed and be responsible to this problem. It is our problem. The destructive force of gangsterism and drugs can only be overcome when the people's government across all spheres come together in unity to win back our streets from the gangs and the drugs dealers who hold our people hostage in our own communities. And lastly, Honorable Chairperson, I have not heard anyone of this delegation on this House stand up here and say that drugs and gangsterism is good for South Africa. We have identified and acknowledged the problem. So the next question is, what are we doing about it? I challenge this whole House, this august House, as you always say, to come onto the front and say to it, let's propose and enact laws that will give us our communities back. And to challenge the executive, not as a member of political parties, but as a community of citizens whose lives are directly affected by gangs and drugs. And whose job is it to protect the law-abiding citizens of our nation. Mawetu. Come when the house and the temple of Jerusalem's walls are falling. You have a responsibility to come to the forefront. I thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable Tumbi.
Thank you, Chairperson. Ministers, honorable ministers, Justice and Police, distinguished guests, special delegates. Chairperson, in 1992, the ANC asserted in its Ready to Government document that our role is to achieve better policing and an efficient crime justice system with the involvement of our people in the fight against crime and mobilize to refurbish the moral fabric of our South African society. In the President's 2011 State of the Nation address, the President emphasized that the crime statistics showed a decrease in most crimes. He mentioned the murder rate declined by 8% in the past year. This is a commendable given the President's emphasis in 2009 for the need to reduce the incidence of serious and violent crime by 7% to 10% per annum. Chairperson, the President further indicated that government was continuing to improve the capacity and effectiveness of the police, in particularly the detective services, forensic analysis, and crime intelligence. He also supported that there was an increase in visible policing, patrols, in identifying hotspots, and that the police were making visible progress in reducing the proliferation of illegal and legal firearms. There are 4 types, Chairperson, of gangs found here in the Western Cape. Named gangs, non-named gangs, prison gangs, and foreignized gangs. The named gang in the Western Cape are mainly colored males that are linked to prison gangs. They are mainly involved in selling drugs and liquor. Their composition is cross-generational, with many gang members having family members such as fathers and uncles, initiating them into gangs. The named gangs' operational areas are mostly in the Cape Flats, where they are identified by name, are territory-based and strongly embedded in community. The non-named gangs in Western Cape are mainly African males, and they are mainly involved in robberies and violent crimes and have a limited link to prison gangs. The non-named gangs areas of operation are mostly township-based, where they are not strongly embedded and have shorter lifespans. There are gangs, these gangs are smaller group of individuals and are more mobile than traditional gangs. The Constitution, Chairperson of the Republic of South Africa, Act 108 of 1996, provide an overarching framework for SAPS in the exercise of their duties, and the Minister is already explained. I'm not going to at least go there. But Minister mentioned that, therefore, the importance of thorough investigation starting with effective crime scenes management is vitally important. Minister, therefore, the provision of the Prevention of Organized Crime Act of 121 of 1998 have already implemented. 8 individuals have already been charged under the Act, and 4 accused have already been convicted in charge related to the Act, Minister. Thank you for that. The national crime, there is a national crime prevention strategy here, Chairperson. This national crime prevention introduced a paradigm that, amongst other matters, shifted the emphasis of crime as a security issue to viewing crime as a social issue. The effective crime prevention is a medium-term to long-term intervention that requires specific program to be conducted through a shared responsibility of organs of civil society, all spheres and ties of government. The NCPS has 4 pillars, Chairperson, that include the crime justice process, public values and education, reducing crime through environmental design, transnational crime. Chairperson, there's also a national crime combating strategy, also encompasses several cross-border or international priorities, such as crime involving firearms, organized crime, and crimes against women and children. These strategies are further supported by issue-specific action plans, such as the Drug Master Plan, which was also mentioned by the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, which is aimed at supply reduction and demand reduction of drugs. Demand reduction denotes all actions aimed at the prevention of drug consumption by communities, including substance abuse by the youth and adult addicts. Supply reduction refers to all action by the police, including disruption of organized syndicates dealing with drugs, including cross-border actions such as smuggling and trafficking of drugs. The Drug Master Plan is coordinated by the Department of Social Department and participating departments such as South African Police Service have sector-specific mini-drug action plan, indicating discipline-specific action that are conducted by the police. Towards conclusion, Chairperson, there is also a strategy aimed at addressing gangsterism. Community involvement in the fight against gangsterism has been regarded as a measure of success, particularly ensuring that there is greater cooperation with the CPF, community, schools, and religious organizations within a particular area of high incidence of gang-relating activities. Focus programs aimed at youth at schools and within communities have also proven effective. Chairperson, I would like to call upon the honorable ministers to look at the foreign national in South Africa, for they are bringing or selling drugs in their businesses. We are born as a shop up to a Tennessee suite, out as drugs. And land, and I'm not promoting xenophobia, minister, but no by foreigners zizo iskakhulu ezihamba phambili ekunikiseni kwe drugs. Abanye bathi baneca fokwithawana kodwa ifinger of God. Xa ujikela ngapha la finger of God une drugs. And as cawe ezininzi izingaka ezininzi ziza nabantu I think we need to look at that. For those few words, Chairperson, I think together we can do more and we can take South Africa forward, all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable Kikana, MEC Safety, Eastern Cape.
Honorable Chairperson and members of the National Council of Provinces, Honorable Ministers, Honorable Chairperson and members of standing committees, government officials and guests, the prevalence of crime is a threat that we must collectively address as it frustrates our democratic and constitutional values because it distorts the meaning of freedom when communities are subjected to live in constant fear. Chapter 12 of the National Development Plan relating to the building safer communities outlines Vision 30 as follows. In 2030, people living in South Africa feel safe and have no fear of crime. They are safe at home, at school, at work, and they enjoy an active community life free of fear. Women can walk freely in the streets and children can play safely outside. The police service is a well-resourced professional institution staffed by highly skilled officers who value their work, service the community, safeguard lives and property without discrimination, protect the peaceful against violence, and respect the rights to all the equality and justice. In order to achieve the above, and in line with the ANC Manifesto 2014, the following will be prioritized. Reduce the level of crime, both conduct and priority crimes, through coordination and high police visibility. Improvement in the criminal justice system through capacitation of the police, prosecutors, legal, and courts. Maximizing community participation through street committees, community police forum, and community safety fora. One of the critical areas of focus in the electoral term is the promotion of safety and security in our schools, especially in our metropolitan areas where gangsterism and violence are prevalent. Honorable Chairperson, we have observed with dismay that our schools have become battlegrounds of armed gangs, a place for mushrooming of a subculture of crime, whereby gangsters use the places of learning as launching pads for their gangster activities. Our schools have now been turned to places of drug trafficking and trading points for dangerous weapons. This new prevalence of crime in our schools' premises poses a formidable challenge for the democratic South Africa, especially in the Eastern Cape. It can be attributed to different factors, including moral decay, peer pressure, and influence from people who stand to gain out of crime. As a result, young people fear to travel to school because they are threatened or hurt by someone at school and sometimes are verbally abused by someone at school. In recent past, the province of the Eastern Cape has experienced the scourge of gangsterism, which plagued the northern areas of Port Elizabeth in the Nelson Mandela municipality. This is one of the 3 areas identified nationally for intervention. These gangs have been dealt with decisively and conclusively in terms of advanced policing techniques and close interventions means, which includes overt and covert tactics. The South African Police Services has established a task team focusing on detection and prevention of this crime, and we are all determined to combat gangsterism in these areas. Since August 2013, more than 60 gang-related incidents were recorded and more than 130 suspects were arrested through these investigations. The task team is still operating and will be functional in those areas until the situation is normalized. The addition of more members in the Port Elizabeth northern areas is to prioritize all gang-related activities and increase visibility in the area to curb all incidents of violence. A multidisciplinary approach has also been adopted in the Nelson Mandela Metro to fight gangsterism through working together with the Department of Social Development and Education, National Prosecuting Authority, and Religious Fraternity. We believe that the time has come for state, together with the communities, particularly parents and learners, to build a first line of defense and provide guidance. Such approach should promote intergenerational justice through the protection of the rights of children, ownership of schools as a resource within communities, provision of safe and secured environment conducive to learning and teaching. We believe that in order for us to succeed in undertaking this task, we need partners that would assist through pumping resources into our programs. Since 2010-11 financial year, we have been running the Safer Schools program, which culminated into the launch of the safety parole programs and the implementation of the Safer School Crime Prevention Protocol, which was signed by the Eastern Cape Department of Safety and Liaison and the Department of Education. Through the protocol, we want to ensure that the police are active partners in the Safer School programs. As a result, we have seen 1,342 schools being linked to 49 police stations. We will continue to assist the Department of Education by ensuring the linking of school to police stations within the Eastern Cape. This helps us to ensure that police are active partners in fighting crime in schools to make sure that school environment is safe and secure for teaching and learning to take place. This will strengthen and enhance the Safer Schools program. Our safety patrol program has seen the deployment of 42 community police forum members as safety patrollers at 21 schools within the province last year. Through these programs, we have seen twofold approach in that 50% of patrollers are women and that 50% are women were created through expanded public works program. Our early assessment tells us that where the safety patrollers are deployed, there is already a positive difference in relation to school safety and schooling in general. To ensure that SAPS commit to implementing the program, the Department of Safety and Liaison, through its oversight function, will continue to assess the SAPS to determine the number of skills linked to police stations in all districts. Due to the effective and impact of piloting the Safety Patrollers program, the department will roll out this program to further 42 schools. We will further continue with the SAPS Adopt a School, Safer School campaign, working together with the Department of Education and Community Policing Forums. Our Sports Against Crime program is also leading positive results in as far as taking the youth away from combating criminal activities, because coupled with these games are youth dialogues. These discussions relate to issues that affect the youth, who are encouraged to provide solutions to their challenges and to implement them with the assistance of our district offices. We are reaping benefits of our formalized relations with the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, whereby we have entered into a memorandum of understanding. This has not only benefited the youth, but also for the broader communities, because these levels of crime that are specifically perpetrated by the youth decreases as a result of this sports engagement. The department will continue to strengthen its partnership with the Department of Sports, Recreation, Arts and Culture to ensure sustainability of the program. Honorable Chairperson, it is through joint initiative that we can be able to build a society of present and future generations that remain committed to strong values, stoical discipline, high moral stamina, humanity, and integrity. In conclusion, we all have a duty to ensure that all the time the improvement of the moral fiber of our society is promoted through an integrated approach and to build strong community values. Let us all continue to work together to build a South Africa that truly belongs to all who live in it. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable Plato, may you continue the debate?
Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Ministers, Minister of Police and Minister of Justice, Honourable Members, good afternoon. Honourable Chairperson, the Western Cape Department of Community Safety recognizes that crime is a multifaceted and complex phenomenon. Different communities have different safety concerns and needs. Interventions to create safe environments and communities in which crime is less likely to occur need to take the differences into account. Meaningful partnerships are at the heart of the Department of Community Safety's whole of society approach to increase safety in our province. The Western Cape government is committed to working better together in the fight against crime. Chairperson, we have to be frank about the problem we face. The drug floodgates opened the moment the specialized drug and specialized gang unit was disbanded. That is why we are calling on national government to please reinstate them to bring back normality in our communities. The statistics speak for themselves. Between the 2003-2004 and 2012-2013 financial year, drug-related crime in the Western Cape has increased from 19,940 reported cases to 82,000 reported cases, an increase of 311.5%. During the same period, the Western Cape province contributed more than a third of the drug-related crime in the country. Though increased arrest can also be attributed to better policing, and we acknowledge that, one would expect that over time these crimes in itself should go down. That is not what we are seeing. The fact that these crimes continue to increase overall is an indication that current policing efforts are insufficient to address the problem. What is extremely worrying is the increase in youth gangs or the youth involvement in gangs. We are seeing kids as young as 10 to 14 years old running around with guns, peddling drugs close to or even on school grounds. The prevalence of guns in our communities is a cause for concern. Up to 35 weapons are being confiscated per week on the Cape Flats. That equates to roughly 140 guns per month and more than 1,600 guns per year. These are the weapons being used to kill our innocent people and children, and also members of our communities and even police officers. Some of these weapons are even licensed firearms. The question is, where are these guns coming from? Who are supplying the guns? It is critical that police intelligence begin focusing on the trafficking of weapons in the province. Sufficient reprimands should also be in place for gun owners who are not adhering to their responsibility in keeping their firearms safe. While citizens have a right to become licensed firearm owners, they have a duty to secure their guns. Chairperson, we should ask the frank question of why current efforts to address the problems above are failing. Why are the South African Police Service's actions unable to bring down gang and drug-related crime? Why are SAP's intelligence not infiltrating where the guns are coming from, where the drugs are coming from, and why are the gangsters and criminals not off the streets? We cannot play politics with people's lives. We cannot play politics in the fight against gangsterism and drugs. We cannot play politics in looking at finding solutions to why we are not winning the war. An answer applicable to the Western Cape is a serious shortage of police resources available. Last year, the then Minister of Police admitted that 128 of the 150 police stations in the province are understaffed. Chairperson, 85% of police stations in this province do not have enough police officers. The local police commissioner admits that. The police in the Western Cape are experiencing a shortage of 1,012 members. This accounts for 61% of the police shortages nationwide. Or put another way, 2/3 of the shortage are in the Western Cape. I believe the Provincial Police Commissioner is trying to do the best that he can with the limited resources available. But clearly the problem needs an urgent solution from the national government, and the first order should be redirecting police resources from those provinces which have a clearly identified over-resourced police service. We have to ask what we are doing. What is everyone's role and responsibility to fight gangsterism and drugs together? One of the Western Cape senior generals the other day admitted that the police in the province are not able to beat gangs on the Cape Flats. Recently, at a meeting in Bonteheuwel, the residents begged for protection from gangs and drug-related violence. Community members made calls specifically for specialized units to be reintroduced. I have repeatedly called on both the National Minister of Police and National Commissioner of Police to urgently provide the Western Cape with additional police resources and reinstate the specialized gang and specialized drug units. The lack of resources adds additional strain to a police service which is already stretched quite thin in the province. This is why the Western Cape government has at times called for the temporary deployment of the army in hotspot areas facing continued gang violence and shootings. As a visible peacekeeping force, the temporary deployment of the army can free up the police to do the necessary investigative work needed to ensure arrest. These arrests must translate into convictions to take gangsters off our community streets. The army was recently deployed in other provinces to restore calm in a situation of community unrest, but not in the Western Cape when people are dying from gangsters' bullets. Speaker, or Honourable Chairperson, how can we expect from the police to curb the violence, curb the effect of gangsterism and drugs if we do not have if they do not have the adequate resources to eradicate the problems? The approach to the problem of gangsterism and drugs cannot be a business as usual approach. Chairperson, we need the specialized gang and drug units to be reintroduced. These units possess the necessary resources and expertise to investigate and to make arrests and come with a track record of success. Police Commissioner Piega recently boasted that since the re-establishment of another specialized unit, the SAP's Family Violence, Child Protection and Sexual Offences Specialized Units, 4 years ago, there were a combined 36,225 year imprisonments and 695 life imprisonments to combating the heinous crimes against women and children. We need the same approach to achieve success in combating gangster violence. Chairperson, we need to bring back the police reservists in the ongoing fight for safer communities. We need to ensure that interventions from all those involved not only tackle increasing crime rates in our country, and that of gangsterism and drugs in particular, but also eliminates the causes and opportunities for these crimes. The sacking of so many thousands of reservists impacts severely on police manpower, resources at police stations. It impacts on police visibility on our streets. We hamstrung the police so much and still believe the SAPs must win the fight against drugs and gangs and violence.
You're running out of time, Honourable Member.
Chairperson, the Department of Community Safety and the Western Cape Government has already adopted a whole of society approach to increase safety in our communities. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable Mutara. Honourable Mutara, can you continue the debate?
Honourable Deputy Chairperson, MECs present, special delegates from provinces, members of the NCOP, guests and friends. Today, the National Council of Provinces gathers to reflect and ponder on a pressing societal issue that has touched each and every one of our lives, whether directly or indirectly. We approach the subject with trepidation, bearing in mind that some amongst us live with these manifestations in our very homes. We should therefore be mindful that we are not blamed tomorrow of getting onto a pedestal, grandstanding as it were, pointing to what should be done by others as opposed to the role you and I can play in addressing the problem. Honourable Chair, gangsterism as a social construct is not an entirely new phenomenon. History is laced with elusive anecdotes of gangs, their members and activities. Whether real or fictitious, this phenomenon has been with society from time immemorial. What's most disturbing, though, is how this societal construct has evolved over time, and not necessarily for the better. There are many reasons that one could cite for the existence of gangs and gangsterism, but we must bear in mind that these reasons are not exhaustive, and as we interrogate and further study these societal ills, more information becomes available. What is glaringly missing from the evolution of gangsterism in our communities is the readiness of the citizens to respond. But responding cannot only be answering to the issue, it must also create preventative mechanisms and adequately prepare for the negative, long-lasting effects of the scourge. Some of the reasons for gangsterism are both factual and perceived. They range from low self-esteem, dysfunctional family structures, economic and exclusion, and an opportunistic element that reigns within gangs that create the illusion of acceptance and importance. Within the evolution of gangsterism, substance and drug abuse cannot be excluded from this construct. While drug and substance abuse is ever increasing and is also a broad societal issue, once it is coupled with gangsterism, the problem becomes compounded. Consequences of the scourge become far-reaching, with its negative effects being felt for generations to come. Honourable Chairperson, amongst us, who can forget the touching, painful appeal made by Dorleen James to the President of the country, crying out for help to deal with her son's drug addiction? On the intervention of the President and the fourth administration of Gauteng, more than just drug abuse in Eldorado Park was uncovered. The intervention brought together all role players in society, every citizen, private and public entity, and anyone who can really call themselves human. What this demonstrates is the practical expression of working together, we can do more. Without pointing fingers or blaming each other, everybody came together to acknowledge their role in allowing the scourge to get to the extent it has. How many of us know mothers and grandmothers who are abused by their dependents as a result of not getting their next fix? How many parents return to a home missing jewelry, appliances, money, and even clothes that their own children have taken in order to sell? Reducing the efforts of their parents to minimal rands that will get them through the next day or two. These are the realities that many South Africans live with across the race, gender, class, and religious divide. What is even more disturbing is that increasingly girls are becoming prey to addiction, and not only addiction, but also becoming active members of gangs. Gangs and gangsterism grips communities with fear, rendering critical aspects of our lives useless. It has disrupted teaching and learning, whereas the President has made a clarion call for all teachers to be in school, in class, on time, teaching and learning for at least 7 hours a day. Teachers who excel succeed because they implement these core principles. But that cannot be practically possible if there are no students due to disruption caused by those who don't have the best interests of our learners at heart. Citizens and communities in South Africa can only flourish under safe environments. A safe environment is not an electric fence, CCTV cameras, and private security, but rather a psychological and physical experience of well-being. I deliberately use the word experience to demonstrate the importance of feeling and going through the process, having had lived through any life matter. Honorable Chairperson, today's theme demonstrates our firm resolve to work together to wage a concerted effort against gangsterism in our communities and society at large. We must respond more vociferously than ever to the cries of the people of Eldorado Park, Mabopane, Westbury, Mamelodi, Guguletu, Elsie's River, Nyanga, Mitchell's Plain, Valhalla Park, and other areas that are ravaged by gangsterism and drugs. Indeed, Honourable Minister, we must work together as government with our communities in our collective effort to make our communities safe. We must do everything that we possibly can to ensure that all South Africans, especially our children, are safer and feel safer in our streets and in their homes. Our esteemed stalwart and a veteran of our struggle for freedom, the late President Nelson Mandela, when delivering his inaugural address after being sworn in as the first democratic president of South Africa, said, and I quote, "Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another and suffer the indignity of being the skunk of the world," close quote. By so saying, our late president dared us to uphold the human rights of every citizen. Indeed, it is our collective duty to use this platform to commit ourselves to these ideals to put an end to the scourge of gangsterism and drugs in our communities. Today, we have in us the privilege to make real the ideals of the late President Mandela and the solemn promise of freedom and democracy that we made to the people of South Africa. We must roll up our sleeves, join all our efforts and work towards uprooting gangsterism and all its elements from our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Honourable Chairperson, Safety, Transport and Public Works from the Northern Cape, Honourable Oliphant.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Ministers, members of the Executive, members of NCOP, members of public in the gallery, ladies and gentlemen. Honourable Speaker, it's also a great privilege for me to partake in this debate about the most disturbing social ills that affect our society. Gangsterism and drugs abuse in our communities around South Africa. In the past few months, we have observed with great concern how acts of violence perpetuated by the use of drugs and gangsterism led by the killings of babies and young children in around Gauteng. These shocking stories has left us in a dismay that we have watched in the news broadcasted. As a nation, we cannot sit back and allow gangsters to rule our communities. The Freedom Charter said clearly that there shall be peace and security and comfort in our country. This, Honourable Speaker, must be ensured by the ANC-led government take place. We must use the maximum force through our security forces, of our country to ensure all those who deal with drugs in our communities are arrested and kept in jail for a long time. It's our duty, Honorable Speaker, to involve our communities by educating them to report any suspicious attempts of illegal drug trade activities that are happening in our communities to the police. We must go back to basic and revive our street communities and patrol our streets over the weekend to ensure that our people don't live in fear in their own areas. Honorable Speaker, South Africa supposed to be a safe haven for all who live in it. We cannot continue to be terrorized in our own communities by gangsters and drug lords. We must defend ourselves and our children against violence caused by these thugs in our communities. Honorable Speaker, our fight against drugs and gangsterism in our society must be deepened to the root cause of its problem. In order for us to succeed, we must speak out the root of the problem, which are the corrupt police relations with criminals. It has been reported several times that in many cases there are police involvement in these drug dealings. Corrupt police do not have a place in the police force, must be dealt with accordingly. If we are serious to fight this kind of social ill that affects our society so badly, not only corrupt police are the only root factor, but also the number of drugs manufacturing laboratories that grew in our communities on a daily basis. Where these drugs are being manufactured is a problem. These laboratories are on the growing scale in our countries, and they are well known to our own citizens in our communities, and nothing is being done about it. Perhaps it's because citizens are scared to blow the whistle, because they themselves are scared they will be harassed by these drug lords and gangsters assisted by corrupt police officers and will be killed. We must teach our people not to be afraid to report this happening, because this will help and protect them and their kids from being destroyed by drugs in their communities. We need to act now and do more to stop the behavior, Honorable Speaker. Furthermore, I must emphasize, Honorable Speaker, not all police are corrupt, and those good ones must be applauded. The good police officers must always be motivated to do their work to the best of their ability and be encouraged to be always loyal to the police of South Africa at all times. Honorable Speaker, the NPA must be commended for the sterling work they have done by arresting a 72-year-old man and a woman who were found to be in possession of about 12,439 Mandrax tablets to the street value of 1.2 million at Kimberley Station this past Saturday. And at the same time, another 42-year-old man who were in possession of 1.8 kg of cocaine, as reported in the newspaper. This indeed is a job well done, as it seems that these thugs use their space that it is available to them to carry these drugs around in our country. Imagine what happens while passenger trains are supposed to be safe places to move around from one point to the other by ordinary citizens who cannot afford the luxury of buying cars. Now these criminals use this as a mode of transporting their own cargo. They must clamp down on them in their cars, buses, trains, everywhere they are so that they can see we are really serious about combating this scourge. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, Community police forum must be encouraged to take their work serious in order to ensure that there is consistency in fighting crime in our areas. This forum must play a very important role in assisting government in this fight against drugs and gangsterism. Before I can conclude, who introduced Oka Pipe? And is this person using the very same Oka Pipe who introduced it to our children, because they say Oka Pipe is cooling the mind and stress. We grow up not having stress, but our children are having stress, and we allow them to smoke daga and nyaupe in front of us. Inside the Oka Pipe, let us also abolish the Oka Pipe. I am not sure their children do smoke Oka Pipe, but they teach our children to smoke Oka Pipe. In conclusion, Honorable Speaker, for us to achieve our national agenda successfully, we need to ensure that we engage vigorously in the battle against drugs and gangsterism in all our provinces to a greater extent, as this will enable us to the end of the day to improve the quality of life of all people for the better. Let us all strive and make South Africa the beautiful land, a safe haven for all of us. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Oliphant. We have a chairperson and deputy chairperson in the NCOP. We call on the next speaker. It is the MEC Gauteng, the Honorable Nkosi Malubani.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Chair, my apology, Honorable Chair. We're used to speakers in Gauteng. Minister Masuta, Minister Ntleko, members of NCOP, honorable members, ladies and gentlemen. We are the nation both afraid and obsessed with crime. Each day, newspapers tell another story of innocence shattered. Tangrin Morris, a 3-year-old killed after his mother and sister were hijacked. The Van Wyk boy killed by a ruthless criminal after being abducted and found after 3 days. And the shootout between gangs left a 3-year-old Luke Tibet killed in Westbury. In the evenings, our televisions are saturated with real crime dramas. Our men and women in blue are continuously fighting against drug-related crimes. We have increased our expenditure on policing as well as increased the number of jails to lock up criminals. But we still have a challenge of crime, particularly gang-related crimes. Gauteng have decided to wage war against crime through an integrated approach, where communities play an important role in crime reduction. The Department of Community Safety, through the promotion of Safety Directorate, has a mandate to ensure the promotion of safety in the province through the provision of education and awareness programs focusing on the prevention of violence against women and children, youth safety, school and child safety, alcohol and substance abuse prevention. The Premier of Gauteng, Honorable David Makhura, in his first State of the Province address, presented a 9 pillars of radical transformation. One of the pillars is accelerated social transformation, which aims to raise the living standards and the quality of life of all people of Gauteng. According to this pillar, the Gauteng Provincial Government is determined to improve the quality of education and health care, provide social protection to the vulnerable groups, particularly women and children, and to eradicate poverty and build social cohesion and solidarity. The province have witnessed intermittent cases of gangsterism and gang violence spreading through the school environment, thus disrupting the process of teaching and learning. Recently, youth gangs have grown in leaps and bounds due to population shifts and unstable neighborhoods, and this poses a public security threat. The activity of these gangs range from defending their neighborhood theft and armed robbery, extortion, drug abuse, and even rape. The following areas have been infiltrated with gangs. As a result, casualties were told us were caught in the firing line. The following areas are most affected in Gauteng. The first one, Repatriation community of about 10 gangs, of which most of them are youth who are between the age of 15 and 30 years. Surprisingly, these gangs constitute of females as well. Though naturally males are majority, the greatest challenge faced the Repatriation community is that they come from disadvantaged background where both parents are unemployed. As a result, they tend to alcohol and drug abuse. To feed their habit, the same young people help to peddle drugs for drug lords. The youth themselves are unemployed and they tend to crime. However, we also have schools that have made interventions in assisting previously expelled learners who were involved in gang-related activities. To some extent, the intervention by the schools have assisted in the containment of the scourge. In Eldorado Park, the President of the Republic of South Africa visited the area on the 14th of May 2013 after a letter by a concerned community member who noticed the plague of drugs, especially in youth. The department, together with other departments, have been monitoring the area ever since, and there were lodges that were closed down with assistance of community members and SAPS. In the area, the main concern is drugs and gangsterism. Everton, situated in the Val, where there is still a belief that when you haven't been to an initiation school, you are not a man. Young men from initiation schools, which normally operated during school holidays, after schools reopens, these boys will torment the others who were not part of the initiation school by calling them names like boys. It has escalated to bullying by forcing them to do petty stuff like carrying their bags and doing part of their schoolwork. The area consists of 2 gangs ranging between 17 and 27 years. In Pegastal, last year, Westland experienced a high rate of service delivery protests, which resulted in lots of unrest within the community and the municipality. During that time, the rate of violence has been reported in high schools that emanated from gangsters in the community during the protest. The area consists of at least 10 gangs, of which 3 is a female gang. The Department of Community Safety has the following programs that are part of waging the fight against drugs and gangsterism. The Department of Community Safety, in partnership with Social Development, have hosted 2 anti-Nyaupe camps in 2013 and 2014. Youth camps targeting young persons addicted to substance abuse and involving gangsterism, which are willing to change. The camps are aimed at the following objectives: motivation of young people to stop using alcohol and drugs and being active in gangsters, support young persons to lead better lives and develop their life plans, involve families in the fight against gangsterism and substance abuse to ensure that their children become better, productive, and successful persons. Developing a record of young persons addicted to alcohol and the drugs, gangsterism, and track their process of change. Promote education and development through government support. Camps are a week-long. Experts in the field engage young people and motivate them. Parents and families are included so they will support them after camp, and to continue motivate and monitor their behavior. Beyond the camp, the department have an aftercare program of which the participants who went through the rehabilitation are part of youth desks and others being assisted to acquire at least a skill that they can use to be independent from substance. We also have prison tours, where high-risk learners and youth are taken to correctional facilities to witness a harsh reality of experimenting with drugs and also getting involved in criminal activities. This work as a deterrent to potential criminals. We train young people to be safety ambassadors, where they assist in interacting with their peers and impart them with safety issues in general, and to inform them about a youth desk that they can participate in and making their community a safer one to live in. Madam Chair, in conclusion, the Premier of Gauteng, Mr. David Makura, established a subcommittee where he clustered department according to work they do. This clustering has assisted in dealing with social problems, particularly crime, effectively. The Department of Community Safety, under the social cluster, is the first department in the development of anti-gangsterism camp program. By this, the department seeks to identify the link between drug abuse, bullying, and gangsterism. The camp will focus on out-of-school youth aged between 17 and 25 years, and also who are at school at the moment and are ringleaders of some of the gangs. This program aims to help identify factors that will help reduce gang involvement and introduce alternative to a gang life and looking into a root cause. As a department, we aim to ensure the constant reduction of social crime and all criminal-related activities, including drugs, together with an entire stakeholders working cooperatively to meet all targets through an accelerated social transformation. Gauteng is committed in fighting gang violence.
Round up, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, ma'am. Gauteng is committed in fighting gang violence and drug-related crimes through the involvement of our people. We are also obliged to fight crime and restoring the citizens' faith and trust in our law enforcement agencies and criminal justice. This is a war we need to win together and fight this practice that kills our children and future leaders. A country without a hungry youth or education and further rights is no country. Nyabo.
The next speaker is the Honorable Vouda. Please don't break a leg.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Allow me first and foremost to acknowledge the presence of our supreme forces. I greet all of you with Assalamu alaikum. Honorable Ministers, Honorable MECs, Honorable Members, the drug problem in South Africa has been on a continual rise, especially in the last few years. It is quite clear that we have lost the battle against drugs and gangsterism in this country. On a daily basis, we see small children being shot in this country, especially in the Western Cape, but also increasingly in other parts of the country.
Order, members. There is a speaker
where the
on the
use of
podium.
drugs and alcohol is increasing at an alarming rate. It is really heartbreaking to see small children and infants die like this. It is quite disturbing to see those who are responsible for ensuring that this malpractice comes to an end are helpless and not doing anything about the situation, but are actually participating within this abominable system. There is definitely no proper legislation to deal with this particular problem. Cocaine, marijuana, dacha, neope, and many others are all drugs that are becoming increasingly popular especially in the township areas, and are also extending slowly to more urban areas and cities. Young people in particular use drugs, and the result of this is that they end up participating in high levels of crime, like car hijackings, robberies, pickpocketing, housebreaking, rapes, and many more. And recently we are seeing increasingly the murder of their own families and their own parents. Women and children are victims of these crimes. The use of cocaine in South Africa has risen by 20% in recent years, in the last 2 years, and it is continuing to rise. There are no drastic measures from the responsible ministry and government to deal with the scourge of drug use and gangsterism. In 1996, approximately 1.6% of South Africans sought treatment for cocaine abuse. This number has risen to 17.5% by 2008, and it is growing all the time. Last year, heroin use almost doubled in this country, because the price has substantially been lowered, making it more affordable for people using it and for would-be users. The drug lords and kingpins continue to loiter our streets, selling drugs to our children. These drugs have serious social implications because youngsters end up selling furniture and other valuable items from their own homes to feed their addiction. This is a very, very serious social problem that is eating into the fabric of our society. They also end up beating their parents, as we've already indicated, and demanding more and more money and funds from their families. It has been specifically marketed in certain townships and areas around the country, which makes the use of drugs in Africa to double the world norm. South Africa being a very serious route and a hub from which drugs are being exported to surrounding African countries. This, Honourable Ministers, is a serious indictment on this country, and we will need to address this issue as a matter of urgency. Figures published by the South African Police Service show that drug abuse accounts for almost 60% of all crimes. According to university researchers, South Africa has the dubious distinction of having the largest illegal drug market in the whole of sub-Saharan Africa. Factors that have contributed to rising levels of drug abuse. And I mention this specifically because in addressing these, it will assist us in addressing the issue of high drug abuse in this country. Factors that have contributed to rising levels of drug abuse include widespread and severe poverty levels, rapid modernization and decline of traditional and social relationships, as well as the issue of our porous borders. Expanding trade links with other parts of the world, such as Asia, Europe, and America, have also made South Africa attractive to drug traffickers. Thus, paying special attention to the mentioned factors will go a long way in fighting the huge problems facing South Africa with regard to drug trafficking and drug abuse. Honourable Ministers, bridging the large socio-economic discrepancy in this country would have far-reaching consequences in the fight against the scourge of drug abuse. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, sir. The Honourable Chairperson for Transport, Safety and Security and Liaison, Honourable Masamula.
Thank you very much, Chairperson of the NCOP. A very good afternoon to the Chief Whip, and as well as our honorable ministers present here, Minister Masuta and Minister Ntleko, honorable MECs that are part of this meeting this afternoon, members of the House, distinguished guests, comrades and fellow South Africans. We are meeting here today to debate the most critical issues affecting the nation in a manner unimaginable, given the social transformation advances we have made since 1994 in changing the lives of our people. We have created the socio-economic environment in which the people of our country could explore many possibilities and unleash their full potential in their development advancements and their efforts towards prosperity, in particular the youth, because they are the future of this country. Honorable Chairperson, the problem of gangsterism and drugs in our communities is not only facing the youth but the entire nation in this era of freedom and democracy. And it's indeed a worrying situation because prior to 1994, the youth of this country were part of the struggle for liberation that ensured the realization of the 1994 democratic breakthrough, many of whom today assume serious responsibilities of leadership and management, both in the public and as well as private sector institutions of the Republic. It is heartening to see what is going on in our communities, where the conscience of the people involved is not based on strong pillars, but on social illnesses that consumes their well-being and that destroy the basic of consciousness critical and required to consolidate and harness the energies for pursuance of an agenda to create a nation characterized by development, success, and prosperity. Chairperson, our struggle for the creation of a society long envisioned would not be without turbulences if this phenomenon is not attended to vigorously. The gains of our revolution and the plans ahead of us for generations to come might as well be affected very negatively. It is an undisputable fact that today alcohol and drug abuse in particular are slowly eating into the moral fiber of our communities. And these affect the building blocks of effective communities and societal development. This challenging situation needs serious moral regeneration and RDP of the soul, as said by President Nelson Mandela. As such, make sure that we reposition the innermost campuses of the people affected so that they can be able to respond to this situation without any difficulty. This is required to ensure that there is safety and protection of the communities, and there is love and care for each other, and promote neighborhood, that the people are able to walk their streets of their localities without fear and any challenges. Honorable Chairperson, the studies conducted in this regard shows that the country is faced with a challenge that needs our serious attention. They reported the highest alcohol consumption rates by the youth, and that the use of drugs and gangsterism among teenagers is also occupying space. This situation beckons on us to wage a tireless war against drug production and smuggling and gangsterism, to free the ones captured to use their creative energies for their livelihood and for the good of the country. Because this problem indeed brings incredible complexities and barriers in the lives of the people. And therefore, a substantial change in adaptation through united efforts of community stakeholders and government should be ensured to make sure that we realize the substantial shift and sustain the gains secured in many localities. Chairperson, the negative impact made by these social ills do not only impact on the individuals, but also deprive this country of good future leaders, and also has implications for South Africans because it contributes to crime, to domestic violence, family dysfunctionality, risky sexual behavior, and other social behavioral problems that characterizes the affected communities and localities in various parts of the country. It impacts also on the health and welfare resources, thus largely troubling the society. I would like to take this opportunity, Honorable Chairperson, to appreciate the high-profile operations of the South African police services and their tireless efforts to bring stability and normality in our communities. Indeed, together with us in our various capacities, working with progressive social formations, this challenge cannot continue to be or cannot be insurmountable. A thorough ongoing process of engagement and clearing of possible imaginations of benefits related to drugs and gangsterism should be attended with the vigor and determination it requires. We are quite clear and hopeful that the two ministries of police and justice would make it difficult for perpetrators of these ills to find comfort amongst and within our communities. And further, to appreciate the implementation of the efforts on anti-substance national plans by government and its partners to ensure that our country is free from drug abuse and gangsterism. Honorable Chairperson, it is our firm belief as the African National Congress that critical elements of the value system that characterize our nation should include social dissuasion against consumption of substances that destroy the human mind and formation of antisocial groups which create conditions for wrong things to happen in our communities. The state and government of the African National Congress, given its capacity and resources, would continue to mobilize the people to be part of this democracy with social content. We will vigorously, with our communities across the length and breadth of our country, make sure that there's no space created for drug lords, for gangsters, and other related activities. With these few inputs, I want to thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable Thaba. Is that a point of order, Ntatini? A point of congratulations. The point is taken, sir. It just shows the House. The Honorable Thaba, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, members and all guests. The Honourable Plato Minister already gave us the statistics on crime increase, and it is absolutely shocking. Drug-related crime has increased more than 300% since specialised units were disbanded in 2004. We all agree that statistics is shocking as crime and drugs affects us all as South Africans, black and white. Crime does not have a color. Let's all understand that. And it will all affect us at some stage of our lives. Now, as we heard today, it came to more of a shock to me, coming from the Northern Cape province, as my colleagues are sitting here, that 85% of police stations in Cape Town is understaffed and 60% of all the national SAP vacancies exists in the Western Cape. It is time for the SAPs to address the shocking situation and also protect all citizens living in the Western Cape. Although the DA governs the Western Cape, it still remains the National Police Service to serve all people in our country, all 9 provinces, Minister. The Commissioner believes that the crime situation in the Western Cape is under control and advised the National Minister that specialised units are not necessary. Members, can you actually believe what we are saying here? That it's not necessary. I can't believe this. Minister, we must make communities safer by putting properly trained police officers on the streets. Even deploy the army if we have to. The DA have repeatedly requested President Zuma to employ the SANDF to stabilize gang hotspot areas so that the police, which are supposed to do the job, can be freed up to investigate crimes and bring gang members to justice. These requests have unfortunately been turned down by our Honourable President. The Specialised Drug Police Unit SANUP were originally disbanded by the then Commissioner Jackie Selebe to protect well-connected gang bosses like Cheryl Chweu, the ex-wife of the then State Security Minister Sibongwana Chele, and were convicted in the KwaZulu-Natal High Court in May 2011 of using drug mules to smuggle cocaine. Minister, to protect communities from devastating effects of drugs and alcohol abuse, government must bring these specialized units back. We have no option. We must create a public-private partnership to fight drugs and crime. Strengthen border securities, devote more funds to rehabilitation, increase the number of addiction treatment centers, expand drug rehabilitation programs in prisons, and make use of random drug testing in schools where appropriate. Prioritize funding for combating alcohol abuse is also necessary. The establishment and funding of programs to address these socio-economic impacts of alcohol abuse, preferably with cooperative arrangements with churches and other community organizations must go hand in hand with more vigorous efforts to reduce alcohol abuse. For instance, fetal alcohol syndrome affects innocent babies and destroys these children's life because of brain damage. Now, Honourable Stanby, let us not fool ourselves. Gang crime is not under control in the Western Cape. It's not a good story to tell. Our police needs to be trained much better to really combat ongoing related crimes. This is a national issue, not a provincial issue. And gangsters in the Western Cape and other provinces, Honourable Member, are not coloureds, blacks or whites. They are all called criminals. Now let me go back.
Honourable Thaba,
now what is the DA doing in Cape Town? A group of Metro Police officers have been handpicked to form a gang unit which solely focus on Camden. Am I finished?
No, I'm giving you space to round up.
Okay. We have to have partnerships like Honourable Plato have with religious communities. And lastly, the Department of Social Development is failing the nation in their mandate to support and empower parents and their children in important life skills in connection with crime and drug abuse. I thank you, Honourable Chair.
The Honourable Chairperson, SPD Skosana Kamashangu, from Mpumalanga.
Sihlalo hloniphekile wendlu umkhandlu lo. Isekela lakho ubaba uTawu. Abongqongqoshe bokhona la babuMasutha noNhleko. Unoswebhu wendlu le hloniphekile. Amalunga wonke akhona la wendlu le. Balingani bami nonke. Sihlalo hloniphekile. Indlu le nomraro. Enomraro ula eTshingalanga Kapa. Usomkhandlu wokuvikeleka komphakathi eTshingalanga Kapa batsho ufuna amasoja afakwe kwi-province le for amapholisa azokwenza umbereko wawo. Kana amapholisa la hirilweni nangabe mdele nabenza umbereko wabo mdele kuza amasoja amandangi. Umraro omkhulu lo engicabanga ukuthi ikinga ikulu isemkhumbulweni emkhumbulweni wabantu bendawo le. Kungakho nobaba uFaba afakazela into leyo. Welike into zimbili ukuthi ke abantu laba balapha eWestern Cape, Tjingalanga Kapa ababusako babhalela ukubusa. Nobanyana lezi zinto ezenzakala la zenzeka ngoba kutsho bona ukuthi zenzeke. Thina ke njengomkhumbulo njengabantu ababuye ehlanganeni enkulu ihlangano ka-African National Congress. Konke lokho sikubonako sikubona njengabantu nezenzo zempurelane. Impurelane kenza nje. Abantu kuhle ukuthi bakope into ezihle enhlanganweni kodwa nabakopa wele bakope bhanya moyi. And bakope into ezihle. And ANC kuphela ngakunikela into ehle. Welike abalingani bamana ukutsho ukuthi ke bakhulumela abalingani bami labadlulile bonke laba be-DA kodwa ke yonke lento beyenzakala labayikhulumako buvuvu. Ke sibatshele ukuthi eMpumalanga mhlali ngaphambili kubereko kanjani. The province of Mpumalanga has over the years constituted the broad front in the fight against crime and road carnage. We've mobilized a huge contingent that we will use to ensure that our efforts are felt, seen and appreciated. As a result, Honourable Chair, we feel privileged to participate in this debate to highlight the importance collectively of waging a concerted fight against gangsterism, drugs in our communities. We have started and we are on course to cement the broad front against these evils because they are feeding themselves on the moral fiber of our communities. We have the Scholar Patrol members, tourist safety monitors, participants and winners of #1 taxi driver of the year, the participants, winners, road safety school debates, community road safety councils, community policing forums members, all members of the mayoral committees responsible for safety in the province, participants and winners of road safety choral music competitions, the police, the traffic officers, and the members of the community at large. The whole people I have mentioned above, Honorable Chair, represent the broad front that will ensure that a crime-free South Africa, and Mpumalanga in particular, is achieved long before 2030 as guided by the National Development Plan. The key mandate of Justice, Crime Prevention and Security Cluster is to ensure that all people in South Africa are and feel safe in their homes, places of work and businesses whilst they carry on with their lives. Honorable Chair, law-abiding South Africans need to be protected from drug lords who are hell-bent on making huge cash at the expense of our people. The drugs and other substances that finances flashy lifestyles of drug lords are actually eating on the moral fiber of our communities. The fight against gangsterism and drug can only be won through our ability to build a strong broad front to expose, prosecute, and eliminate ringleaders of gangsters and drug cartels. We're particularly noting that fact that alcohol use and abuse in our community is also so pervasive. During crime time and right through all soapies on our screens, alcohol is paraded and associated with success and better life. Our problems with alcohol cannot be separated from the problems that our drugs are causing. Honorable Chair, in Mpumalanga we have a program called Overall Friday, where we bring together all law enforcement agencies to conduct joint operations. Activities include stop and searches, raiding taverns, searching for drugs and other substances. The successes have been recorded and demonstrated clearly that when we join our efforts, we make bigger dent on criminals. As part of ensuring that there is a common understanding and approach by all stakeholders in Mpumalanga, we assist municipalities to develop municipal safety plans so as to mainstream safety issues in their IDPs. These plans allow each municipality to identify and profile all criminal activities and develop a counter strategy which will be supported by the police, the community, and all stakeholders. Gangsters and drugs are also prioritized and dealt with accordingly. The province of Mpumalanga, Honorable Chair, is considering training its traffic officials to be able to identify different drugs. This is done to empower them to deal effectively with cross-border smuggling, since they are always on the road, stopping and inspecting cars. You want them to be able to differentiate between a Panado and a Mandrex on any given time or any drug. Nyaupa is one of the substances that are a headache in Mpumalanga. It is very strong in Witbank and Wamhlanga in the Tembisilihani municipality, which could be attributed to their proximity to Tshwane. We have noted that in order to deal effectively with its scourge, we must identify and destroy the supply. This is where working together becomes very important, because we want to deal with the suppliers and producers of the drugs and close down the supply. When we join hands as a nation, together wage a concerted fight against gangsterism and drugs in our communities, we'll be directly contributing immensely to the well-being of vulnerable groups. This would contribute to the decreasing abuse against women and children. I say this because on many occasions, drugs and substance abuse are the root cause of rapes of grannies and our children. Honorable Chair, women in this country noted in the historic Women's Charter adopted on the 17th of April in 1954 at the founding conference of the Federation of South African Women in Johannesburg. And I want to quote them when they said, "We women do not form a society separate from the men. There's only one society, and it is made up of both women and men. As women, we share problems and anxieties of our men and join hands with them to remove social evils and obstacles to progress." Gangsterism and drugs are exactly the social evils and obstacles to progress that Federation of South African Women, which wanted to be removed as way back as in 1954. This call should be resonated with both men and women and every member of society to join hands to fight a substance-free community. My reference to the conference, Honorable Chair, is purely because women has long understood the need to join hands to fight social evils like gangsterism and drugs. Our coordination of efforts is all that is needed if we are to make a serious dent to the problem of gangsterism and drugs. For as long as, Honorable Chair, the most vulnerable groups in our societies are still subjected to consistent and regular abuses, for as long as our sons and daughters are destroyed by gangsterism and drugs, we can never claim to be a free society and a prosperous nation. Thank you, sir.
The Honorable Motashuping.
Honorable Chairperson, Ministers present here, MECs, Chairpersons of committees, Honorable members of this august House. There has been quite an allegation about the rise of crime in South Africa and the statistics from 1994. One wonders if ever there were any authentic statistics prior to 1994. It pains us so much that most of us lost their lives, disappeared, died, and these statistics were never reported. The ANC government is reporting genuinely and authentically. Honorable members, Honorable Plato and Honorable Mpambo comes to this podium and says that we are not combating gangsterism and drug abuse in this country. But they are very economic with the truth. They do not trace here in the Western Cape how this problem started of gangsterism. Maybe for their free education. African people had land, had cattle, had mutton, had food, plenty. There were no gangsters. When the apartheid regime removed people here in Cape Town from the inner city and located them in flats, gangsters started. The Democratic Alliance in the Western Cape has not put any effort to redress those imbalances. There was never poverty, unemployment, and inequality in our society. They have not even started, even tried to redress those imbalances that were created.
Honorable Thaba, on a point of order. Honorable Thaba. Honorable Thaba is on the floor.
My time.
Is there sabotage?
Okay.
Honourable Chair.
Yes, sir.
On a point of order, this honourable member is so misleading the House, and I really believe that he should retract what he's saying, as the statistics that we've heard already previously in previous debates are totally different of what he is saying.
Honourable
It is a
Thaba.
point of order that he's misleading the House.
Honorable Thaba, I will look at the statistics as he alleges and the statistics that he says he had, and I will come back to the House to rule. Please continue.
The EFF member also comes to this august House and talks about family values. One of the family values that we have when you grew up was to respect adults. We have never called adults with their first names. We refer them, we have respect and honor and dignity. The ANC is directed by the Freedom Charter, which envisages a state where South Africans are
members
safe and able to raise their children in a stable society. This found renaissance in the ANC's 1993 Ready to Govern document, which directed a policy position to ensure that, amongst other things, policing is based on community support and participation. Police remain accountable to society and the community itself through its democratically elected institutions. Policing continues to be subjected to public scrutiny and open debate. Allegations of police misconduct are dealt with by an independent complaints and investigation mechanisms, and a police service that continues to thrive for high performance standards. In 1992, the African National Congress asserted in its Ready to Govern document that its role is to achieve better policing and an efficient criminal justice system with the involvement of our people in the fight against crime and mobilize to refurbish the moral fiber of our South African society. The national struggle for freedom was the critical overarching vehicle to bring about peace, security, and stability to our society in dealing with issues of crime. The ANC proceeds from the premise that a rising quality of life also means improvement in the safety and security of citizens in their homes and environments where they live, work, and engage in extramural activities. The 52nd ANC National Conference of 2007 identified drugs and substance abuse as a priority, as the scourge has the potential to seriously undermine our development and social cohesion efforts. It is usually in the most vulnerable and in the poorest communities where one finds higher levels of alcohol and drug abuse. This reduces the success rate in extricating the affected individuals and communities from poverty and destitution. That is why we locate the combating of substance abuse firmly within the government's crime and the war on poverty programs. The National Development Plan envisages a state where the police work closely with communities, where real partnerships emerge among the different organs of state to ensure that the root causes of crime and criminality are addressed before they pose a major threat to our society. In its 2014 election manifesto, the African National Congress said that we can move South Africa forward by forging a compact between government and its citizens in ensuring that being safe becomes the normal state of our country. There is an interwoven thread between the Freedom Charter, the strategy and tactics, the National Development Plan, and the ANC Election Manifesto, which also points to a consistent aspiration and wish for a better life in conditions of peace, safety, and security. Is that not a better life for all? President Jacob Zuma, in his political overview, in the National Executive Committee, Lekotla, stated to build social cohesion and stronger communities. We must work harder to provide communities with means to tackle social evils such as drug abuse, domestic violence, and race-based hatred. Is that not a better life for all? Furthermore, in his recent State of the Nation address, the President asserted that together we must continue to fight drugs and substance abuse in our schools and communities. We will also prioritize safety in schools, scholar transport, and child health. Those who are selling drugs to our children, we want to warn you. Those who stop outside schools in defense and sell drugs to our children, we want to warn you. We are coming on you. Is that not a good story to tell? The ANC has noted that given the significant scale of the devastating impact of both legal and illicit drugs in our communities. It will focus on the implementation of the National Drug Master Plan and the National Anti-Substance Drug Abuse Program of Action. In the next 5 years, we will build on the progress made in implementing our 2009 manifesto priorities, which has amongst its priority areas fighting crime and corruption. In the last 5 years program, in partnership with communities, to further strengthen the ANC government's fight against drugs. As per the ANC manifesto, we have committed to, in partnership with communities, which will include the formation of street committees in each and every street. It was at the 52nd conference of the African National Congress in Polokwane. We will ensure that there are street committees. The street committees will ensure that each house, each child, each adult, each citizen is protected and safe. And South Africa becomes a very safe place to live in. It is the African National Congress. The government of the African National Congress was elected to build strong, safer, better South Africa. We said we would work together with all sectors of our society to make our streets safer and protect our youth from a life of drugs and crime. And we remain committed to that goal. I must further emphasize that it is only the ANC that has a plan to make South Africa safe and a better place to live in it. No other party has the interest of the society of South Africa at large. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order, members. Order. The Honourable, the Minister, Justice and Correctional Services, Ndati Masuta.
Chairperson, colleagues, the House at large, thank you once again for the opportunity to respond to the debate, which I thought was vibrant, informative, and stimulating. A lot of the ideas that have been shared here should not end here, but should assist us in forging new strategies in partnership with each other and all other role players out there to fight the scourge of crime, of violent crime, of gangsterism, and against the use or abuse of drugs. It is a national call that I think all of us should rally behind and support. I must say that the honourable members representing the African National Congress have demonstrated that in South Africa we have leadership and we have a plan and we have a beautiful story to tell. Denialism will not erode the good achievements that the African national government has achieved over the past 2 decades. And let me just say to the Western Cape, because they love to beat their own drum to a point where they hear nothing else except the drum, the sound from the drum that they beat to the tune of their own ears. Well, let's inform you that if indeed you were as good as you claim and proclaim to be, we should not continue to experience the levels of violent crime and the abuse of substances in the Western Cape continuing at levels that they are. You see, the point is, as we explained in the debate, before gangsterism and the proliferation of abuse of drugs comes to set into a community, something else happens. It's most likely that you'll find that the socio-economic conditions under which people in those areas live create an environment, a conducive environment for the setting in of the negative aspects, social aspects such as crime and the use of drugs. So if you want some idea, stop harping on the song that justice and police and related services are exclusive national competencies, because those interventions only come after the fact. We're talking about prevention here. We're saying, let's create socio-economic conditions in those communities that will ensure
order, members,
that the underlying conditions are positive towards the reduction of instances of crime, violent crime, and abuse of drugs. Start in the West, in the Cape Flats. Do a bit of cleanup. When the president called for us all to embark on a campaign to clean our neighborhoods on Mandela Day, he was trying to instill in the minds of South Africans to say, we want to live in clean and healthy environments in our communities. Clean not only in terms of sweeping the streets, but clean in terms of cleaning some of these unwanted social conditions, such as the abuse of crime. But you see, parties like the DA are hell-bent on opposing anything that comes from the ANC. They like to sing praises for themselves, even where clearly there is no basis for it. The socio-economic conditions under which black people in general in the Western Cape live have not changed an inch since the DA came into power. You have no interest in ensuring that the living conditions of citizens who live in Khayelitsha are improved. You have no interest in ensuring that the living conditions on the Cape Flats continue. Instead, what you keep on saying, you tell us that we are refugees here, you are the only people who are entitled to live here. Just remember, it's only 300 years ago that you came here. People who live in glass houses should not throw stones, because in the process, you will break your own house. Winter hasn't gone yet. You might find yourself in the cold. So take care of your environment. When you know you live in a glass house, don't try to break the next door's glass house, because that stone will break yours first. Chairperson, I think on a more serious note, we need to confront the challenge that we face as a nation. We have a challenge of globalization, where there is movement across boundaries, across oceans, not only of material goods, not only of ideas, not only of money, but also of such things as organized crime, which know no boundaries. And therefore, over and above the strategies that we have adopted, the laws that we have passed over the years, the policies that we've adopted, and the institutions that we have put in place, we need each South African to come together and identify which contribution they can make to make a difference, in order to ensure that the statistics that we are continuing year in, year out to to bring down of levels of crime do not at any stage go down in the sense of us not being able to further reduce the incidence of crime. We need to work together as communities, as constituency offices, as various political parties, as civil society, as trade unions. Our children, at the end of the day, will be the ultimate beneficiaries, because it's either we will leave them with a legacy of a country that is a better place to live, or if we do nothing to address the prevailing circumstances of crime, of abuse of drugs, targeting young people in particular, who also end up being the ones that are involved in violent crime because of the influence of drug abuse, amongst others, they will be left with very little to inherit. So it is first and foremost for their sake that we should address issues such as discipline in the family, amongst children. We need to care what's happening to our children after school, what happens to our children at school. When your child leaves your home, have you looked at your child in the eyes and checked if your child is okay? When you come back from work, have you looked into the eyes of your child and checked if that child is okay? Because it is through showing that we care to our children that would be able to instill a positive mindset in them that will ensure that when they are going through challenges in life, which they often do not want to talk to parents about, we are there to pick it up, we are there to listen, and we are there to guide them, so that at least, starting with the children, we begin to address and to reverse the scourge of crime and substance abuse. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister. The Honorable Minister Ntleko, Minister of Police.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, and thanks very much for the constructive inputs that have been made in this debate. I think this debate has confirmed two fundamental points. The first one is that the issue of drugs and gangsterism in our society is an ideological onslaught against our people and against our country. We have also said through this debate that we should also be always conscious and be alive to the fact that drugs, no, at least gangsters, are not important sort of items from somewhere else. Essentially, they are our children, they are our brothers, they are our sisters in some other cases, and so they grow amongst ourselves. And therefore, you need to mobilize all kinds of efforts to deal with that issue from its basis as a social circumstance. So I think that's what this debate said. Now, there are a few contradictions that I want to talk about. Honorable Mpambo Sibugwana, sorry. I think she spoke quite responsibly as a mother when she says that we should put aside political squabbling and confront this particular problem. I think that's the most responsible statement ever that could be made by any person. And that indeed, if we are not careful, we'll continue to lose our children. And then she made a call that we should make an effort to organize everybody behind this effort to fight drugs and gangsterism. However, here's the contradiction. The contradiction is that MEC Plato, who has a leadership responsibility, comes here and complains about the whole range of issues and does not focus on the question of what initiatives he and them, in the context of the jurisdiction that they operate in the Western Cape, what is it that they are doing to deal with a particular problem? Now, and that's a contradiction. For instance, MEC Plato sees the problem as a military problem. That's the starting point. The issue of drugs and gangsterism in the Western Cape is a military problem. And that's a strange way of thinking. And then, of course, he has made a call to the Minister of Police and the National Commissioner to bring in more police and so forth. With honourable members, MEC Plato has never spoken to me, has never even written me a letter about the issue of police. So I said...
Order, members, order! Order!
I certainly find that very strange. That's one thing. MEC Plato, let me just... MEC Plato said, let me just inform you that, for instance, one of the critical interventions that are being made right in the heart of gangster warfare in the Western Cape is in Elsies River. That community, they've started a community garden. And this is what you don't speak about, because they said they are starting a community garden in order to deal with the question of gangsterism amongst themselves in that community. But what we should be hearing from you is that indeed you are supportive of these initiatives. You are able to reinforce those community sort of engagements that our people on their own on the ground are actually undertaking. Now, lastly, indeed, I think the point is absolutely correct. That emphasizes on one thing and one thing only, and that is we can only win the fight against drugs and gangsterism and against crime and corruption in our society if all of us learn to do one thing and one thing only, and that is to work together at all material levels of our society. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Order, members. There certainly was a robust debate. Whether there were contradictions and words that were sometimes cutting us to the chase, the fact of the matter is that all members who participated here today are concerned about gangsterism and drugs. So I think that we did wonderfully, and we want to thank the ministers for coming, the MECs, and the chairpersons of committees from the provinces. This then, members, means that we conclude the business of today here and our debate, that we request you to remain until the procession has left the house. Thank you very much.
Thank you, honourable members. You may take your seats.
Oh, the chair is closed.